Today we're going to look at the main causes of World War I. The causes of World War I can be simplified into four main causes: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. Do you notice anything? The four main causes spell out the word main, M-A-I-N. Use that to help you remember the causes. During the early 1900s, countries throughout the world were experiencing a time of war glorification. In other words, there was a massive increase by governments in military spending. This was being done as countries tried to compete with each other to prove they were the strongest with the best military. Great Britain, also known as the UK, was a premier naval country because they were an island. They had one of the strongest navies in the world and the largest fleet of battleships. Germany decided it wanted to compete with Great Britain, so they started to build large numbers of battleships as well. The British saw this as an aggressive move and began to fear that they would be attacked, thus causing them to increase their military. At the same time, Germany started an unofficial race with Russia and France to expand their armies. Between 1880 and 1914, these three nations combined increased their armies from approximately 2.5 million people to over 10 million people. A huge increase of power. Throughout Europe, in an effort to help protect themselves, all countries were linked in one way or another by a complex system of alliances by 1914. This system made it more likely that a war would start, and once a war started, the alliance system made it more likely that it would spread. Here's an example. Joe and Steve get angry at each other and decide to fight. Joe punches Steve, causing Steve's friend Bob to get involved and punch Joe. This angers Joe's friend Pete, who enters the fight and punches Bob. Pretty soon, there's an all-out brawl as people take sides and try to defend either Joe or Steve. This is what starts to happen in Europe, but it's countries fighting each other, not people. To add a little complexity to this issue, many countries had secret alliances with each other. Shh. So no one really knew who was allied with whom. Therefore, they didn't really know who would join or fight in a war. In World War I, there will be two primary alliance groups, with smaller countries joining as they see the need. These change throughout the war. But at the beginning of the war, the Triple Alliance is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. As the war progresses and Germany starts to lose, Italy jumps ship and goes to the other side. They're good at this, as you will see in future conflicts as well. The Triple Entente is originally made up of France, Russia, and Great Britain. As the war progresses, Russia will eventually drop out, and the United States will take their place. As we have discussed in class already, this was a time of expanding powers through imperialism. As the US was doing in Cuba and in the Philippines, European countries were also competing for territory and colonies throughout the world. Primarily, the major powers in Europe were competing for land and resources throughout Africa and smaller areas in Europe. The British were fearful that Germany, who was increasing their military might at an unprecedented pace, was going to conflict with them in Africa and try to take over some of their colonies. The Austrians were more concerned with Serbia and Russia and the Balkans. This is essentially Southeast Europe. The Austrians were convinced that Serbia, with the help of Russia, was going to attack them, so they decided to take over Serbia first. Because of the alliance system, this will prove to be a mistake. The basic definition of nationalism is when one takes great pride in one's country. Extreme nationalism, which we will see, is when individuals blindly follow whatever their country or government tells them to, much like you see in this political cartoon. This type of extreme nationalism combined with militarism and imperialism, is what increased tensions in Europe. All of the different nations in Europe thought that they were the best, nationalism, and they were willing to prove it militarily. One area in Europe is going to prove to be the powder keg when it comes to nationalism. In 1908, the Kingdom of Austria-Hungary annexed or took over the nation of Bosnia in the Balkans in Southeast Europe. Serbia, another small country in the area, was concerned that Austria-Hungary would take them over next. Because they were allied with giant Russia, Serbia made the decision to stand up to Austria-Hungary in an attempt to free the region from foreign rule. Even though Serbia is a small country, they are willing to rise up against Austria-Hungary because of their allies. On June 28, 1914, Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the throne of Austria-Hungary, made the decision to visit Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. As I mentioned before, Austria-Hungary had recently taken over Bosnia, causing a rise in Slavic nationalism in the region. Other Slavic countries, including Serbia and Russia, were worried about the advancement of Austria-Hungary and wanted to force them out of the region. As the Archduke and his wife drove through Sarajevo in the morning of June 28th, a group called the Black Hand attempted to kill him by setting off a bomb. It failed, and the Archduke survived. Later that afternoon, 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist, approached the Archduke and his wife and shot them point blank, killing them both. The Austrian government had classified the Black Hand group as a terrorist organization and blamed the Serbian government for supporting terrorists. The Austrians wanted revenge. Austria-Hungary, a medium-sized nation, was emboldened to demand the Serbians to do what they said because they were allied with Germany, a much stronger nation. The Austrians gave Serbia several ultimatums as a way to provide reparations for the killing of the Archduke. Most of these demands were made intentionally unacceptable because Austria was trying to provoke a war with Serbia. However, Serbia agreed to all conditions with the exception of one. They refused to allow Austrian officials into Serbia in order to investigate the assassination. Serbia refused. Russia, again an ally of Serbia, began to mobilize their troops in support of Serbia. Germany demanded that Russia stand down and reduce their armies. Because Russia refused, Germany declared war on Russia, thus starting World War I. So, a conflict that started between Austria-Hungary and Serbia concludes with war declared between Germany and Russia. Great Britain had an entente or alliance with both France and Russia. The British, separated from Europe by a lot of water, believed that these were just friendly agreements, that they wouldn't really be expected to join the war. The French and Russians believed the British would fight, but they were wrong. As the nations on the continent of Europe began to declare war on each other, Britain was resolved to stay out of the conflict. They were able to do so until Germany started their Schlieffen Plan. Germany believed that they had the strongest military and would be able to defeat France and then Russia in a relatively short amount of time. Their plan was simple: deliver a knockout blow aimed at France first. They would take over France and then put all their effort to fight the Russians. In order to avoid the French military and their defenses along the German-France border, Germany decided to invade France from the north, going through Belgium. Germany was convinced that Great Britain would not come to the aid of France, so they went forward with the plan. Germany was correct. Britain would not join the war just to protect France. However, what Germany did not know was that Britain had a secret alliance with Belgium. So when Germany invaded Belgium, Britain reacted. Belgium was Britain's coastal access to the European mainland. Britain was concerned that if Germany took over Belgium, France, they would control all the ports into mainland Europe, and Britain would be locked out. In addition, Britain was also worried that if Germany took over Belgium and France, they would then set their sights on Britain and try to take them over too. So Great Britain issued an ultimatum to Germany to withdraw from Belgium. When Germany refused, Britain declared war on August 4th, 1914. The United States tried to stay out of the war. However, after several incidents, they felt compelled to join in April 1917. Because the war was happening so far away, the United States attempted to stay neutral because it wasn't directly affecting them. Eventually, the United States was forced to take a position and ultimately joined an alliance with Great Britain and France. So, what was happening in Europe to convince the U.S. to join the war? First, Great Britain, who had a superior navy, started to blockade the coast of Germany, not allowing ships in or out. Blockades have the effect of stopping shipments of weapons, food, and other essentials. The idea was to cause Germany to suffer to the point where they gave up. Germany had other ideas. Germany created a vast fleet of U-boats, or submarines. They started using their U-boats to sink British ships they believed were carrying weapons and other war supplies. The British ship, the Lusitania, was classified as being a neutral ship, not carrying anything more than travelers and regular supplies. It is now generally agreed to that the Lusitania did in fact have many armaments aboard, headed for Great Britain. A German U-boat sunk the Lusitania in May 1915, killing almost 2,000 people, including American citizens. This action helped to bring the U.S. closer to war. Germany then attempted to keep the U.S. out of the war in Europe by making a deal and secret alliance with Mexico. The plan was that if the U.S. entered the war, Mexico would attack the U.S. and attempt to retake territory in the southern U.S. Unfortunately for Germany, this telegram from Germany to Mexico, known as the Zimmermann telegram, was intercepted by British intelligence and decoded. So the U.S. found out about the plan before Mexico did, pushing them even closer to war. German U-boats then sunk 4 unarmed U.S. merchant ships heading to Europe. This was the last straw for the U.S. Finally, Britain and France were having a difficult time fighting Germany because Russia had to back out of the war in order to deal with their own revolution. All of this combined caused the U.S. to finally enter the war. Front page headlines after the sinking of the Lusitania. Do you notice any yellow journalism techniques? The newspaper is definitely trying to sway readers to think one way about the event. Here's the Zimmermann telegram. On the left side is the coded telegram that Germany sent. On the right side is the decoded one that the British created. Any questions? Be sure to bring them with you to class on Monday. See you soon.